everyone, I'm Eva, and I'm very excited to welcome you to our sixth Active Peers YouTube live stream today. We have developed and launched this series because we want to give you insight into how you can use Active Peers AI to host engaging and active peer learning sessions for your group so that your participants can get the chance to effectively share knowledge, build confidence, and discover their untapped potential. For those of you who aren't familiar with Active Peers AI, let me give you a quick explanation of what this company is all about. At Active Peers AI, we use artificial intelligence to enable our clients to facilitate a group of people who are engaging in an active and collaborative learning experience. We already have built a AI matching algorithm that matches people based on what they already know and what they want to learn. This ensures that everybody finds the best peer learning partner possible to make the most out of their collaborative learning experience. We also have a peer learning prompter that is used to guide peer discussions to ensure that everybody gets a chance to share, but also learn from one another. Today, I'm going to be interviewing our CEO and co-founder, Susan HayesCulleton, and two special guests, Claire and Susie, who were part of Legal Fridays, which is a tailored program by AL at Goodbody for students participating in Northeast inner city schools. Legal Fridays took place over 3 Fridays in January, structured around developing communication techniques, learning from industry mentors, and building employable career building skills, all woven into a legal theme. During the session, Susan used Active Peers AI lots of times. For instance, Susan used a manual version of our matching algorithm to match each group, whereby they were different from different schools and they all met a different mentor. You're going to hear all about how she made the magic happen later today. And before we invite Susan and our guests to join us, we have put together a short video that gives you insight into how Susan used Active Peers AI's technologies during the session. We will now play the video for you, and then we will invite Susan and our guests to join us soon after.
Well, hello to you both, and thank you so much indeed for taking the time to be here. It is Claire Rooney-Dolan and Susie O'Shea, and we really appreciate you taking time out of your super busy day to being here and being with us. So first and foremost, before we get into talking about Legal Fridays, will you just tell us a little bit about what the Responsible Business Unit at A&L Goodbody does, and in general, just that concept of what responsible business is all about?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Susan. Thanks so much for having us both. We're delighted to be here. Responsible business to us and to the firm that we work in means being considerate about the impact that we're having on our environment and also on the wider society, and particularly with this programme, the society in which we work, because the NEIC schools are in our locality. It's about being conscious when you come to hiring employees, right all the way down to how you responsibly dispose of your waste, for example, and everything in between. It's about holding ourselves responsible and accountable, and ensuring that we have good governance across the firm, right down from the top to the bottom. And for example, as well, it's about looking at how we can engage in our local community in a strategic and an impactful way. And that's really what Susie and I work on a lot of the time here in A&L Goodbody. We manage a lot of the programs that are involved with community partnerships and volunteering and so on. And I suppose A&L Goodbody pride themselves on being a responsible business. And we have, as you said, we've a dedicated team of 3 actually that are responsible for this practice within the firm. So it's taken very seriously by the firm and senior management, which speaks volumes.
I have really seen that, Claire, in my work with you and understanding just how A&L Goodbody works in general. And I think it's a really distinguishing factor as well for a law firm. And before we get into the concept of Legal Fridays and how we made it work and the format and everything, what attracted you to working in responsible business? Is this something that you've always wanted to do? Has it been an evolution of your career? Has it been a happy accident?
Probably a mix of all, I'd say. From a young age, I was always involved in charity right through school. When I finished college, I was looking for a job, and I'd heard of a role that was opened up in a organisation that worked specifically in fundraising for a lot of different charities. And I didn't actually realise that was a job that you could do something that you really love and also have a career in it. So that's where I started. And over the years, I've worked for a number of different charities in a corporate fundraising capacity. So when the role in A&L opened up, I grabbed it with both hands, and that's nearly 5 years ago. The rest is history.
It's interesting how you say, I didn't know that could be a job. And that's a point that we refer to a lot here at Active Peers AI actually, is learning about ideas and jobs that you may not necessarily come up with firsthand. But of course, if we then move into what Legal Fridays is all about, people will have seen the video already there, Susie, about what we made happen, about connecting people together based on what they know and what they wanted to learn, helping the students figure out what questions they would want to ask, and pointing out that preparation for your meetings is a key part of active learning, and then locking in the learnings as well afterwards. So you were there right throughout every Friday to see how it worked. What did you think of the format?
I really loved the format. I think it was really accessible for the young people to come in the morning to be among their peers, and to start off with, what is a law firm? What do we do here? Explaining the concepts, and then getting to meet with speakers pretty much in the first half of the day. And I thought that was really, really valuable for the young people, because they're hearing firsthand from people right across the firm, from both our legal side and our business services side, what it's like to work in a law firm. And the speakers really encouraged the young people to ask questions. And I think the young people asked super engaging questions and kept our speakers on their toes, which was
for sure.
Really... So that was just really wonderful. They got to meet, folks from right across the firm. And then, of course, lunch was a big hit. And then after lunch, they got to put all of this learning into practice and get to meet with mentors one-on-one. And what I really loved over the 3 Fridays was that the young people were coming in and getting to meet people that they'd met already, familiar, friendly faces in a big corporate law firm, and get to ask the questions. And the mentors were also kept on their toes with really tough questions. That was some of the feedback that our mentors shared. They were like, oh, I wasn't ready for that question. And what I loved about that was that the young people felt confident. They felt supported to ask those questions. To feel comfortable in a corporate law firm so quickly was really great. And building those relationships with the mentors really, really helped.
And was there anything that surprised you, Susie, about the interactions that they had, whether, like you say, maybe the level of questions they asked or the comfort that they had, but was there anything you were expecting to happen that didn't? Or the flip side, was there anything that did happen that you didn't expect as we went through the experience?
That's a great question. I think what surprised me was just how comfortable the young people felt. But I suppose the really thoughtful questions, whether the young people were thinking about a career in a legal sense or not. And I think the mentors really spoke to that they were like, okay, it doesn't matter whether you want to work for a law firm or not. I can still kind of impart, my knowledge and expertise. And I felt like the young people really appreciated that. We talked about mentors' previous careers in airlines, for example, and young people really enjoyed that. And I think, Susan, you know this as well. What I loved was the artists that we had in the room.
That's right.
Indeed. Yeah, and being able to use that then in the reflection pieces, for example, in the showcase at the end of the 3 weeks, really supporting the young people to use their strengths in art to kind of showcase what their learnings were. And I thought that was really, to have that flexibility was really wonderful in the program.
That's a good point, because we had some brilliant artists and we didn't necessarily know that. And often when we look for feedback or reflections, we mean text. But in this case, because exactly as you say there, Susie, we gave them the freedom to lock in their learnings through whatever method that they wanted. That is a very important point. And also people learn in different ways and remember in different ways as well. You mentioned there some of the feedback that the mentors shared about the quality of the questions. Was there anything else that they shared with you that we're about to hear for the first time?
And the mentors shared that they just all had a really positive experience. They loved meeting the young people, particularly those mentors that were able to come for all 3 Fridays. Really enjoyed building those relationships over the 3 weeks, which was really important. And just I think feeling, that the young people were kind of supported to ask, really kind of challenging questions and out of the box questions, and they really enjoyed that. And I think giving back is important for our mentors as well. And they hold a wealth of knowledge and experience and expertise, and a whole variety of journeys to their career here in A&L Goodbody. So I think imparting that knowledge is really valuable for our mentors, and just makes just a real feel good thing to do. They really enjoyed it.
Well, I should explain to our viewers as well is that the questions, I always find where they come from in the first place might be, what's the favorite thing about your favorite part about what you do, or what course did you study in college in order to get there? And often I'll ask somebody, well, what do you really want to know? And they tell me something tangential, but not the same thing. They might want to know, well, do I need to get very good marks or very high results in order to get in here? And then I often say to people, well, why don't you ask that question instead? Oh, okay. And all it takes is that second order thinking, is when you ask something, what you really want to know, and the answer to that question actually usually is the real prompt to the question indeed. So that exercise that we did with the teenagers around how do we ask good questions, I'm really glad to see that it had the results that it had, and that the mentors got that sense of achievement or that sense of really giving back as a result, Susie, and thank you. And can I go back to you, please, Claire? This is something that was done over 3 weeks. It was intentionally called Legal Fridays because it was run over 3 Fridays. The intention was consistency, repeated touch points, that sense of learning and building upon what you learned in an iterative way. There's lots of characteristics of this type of a model, but if people wanted to design something themselves that would enable a connection between mentors and young people, what key takeaways do you have that you'd like to share with everybody?
I suppose, first of all, setting something similar up like this has huge value for everybody that's involved. Like, as Susie mentioned, our mentors got huge enjoyment out of it. They learned a lot as well. Personally, I loved hearing, I loved getting an insight into one of the future generations, likes, dislikes, their wants, what's important to them, what isn't important to them. Like, one thing that stuck out to me was that a lot of them would love hybrid working or working from home, and really that was nearly a dream for a lot of people a couple of years ago, but that's very much part of what they're looking for now. And I found it so interesting to hear new perspectives and to hear what's important to the young people, and I personally got a lot out of that. So if someone's looking to set up a program similar to this, I think they're the main takeaways that I had, that it's quite an enriching experience in one sense. Obviously for the mentees, for the students, the feedback we'd gotten from them was wonderful as well. And to see them kind of grow in confidence over the 3 days, over the 3 Fridays was really nice, because yourself, Susan, from doing this, and I've done these types of programs in the past as well. Day one, it's like little mice coming in. They tend to be really quiet and shy, and all of a sudden something clicks and they just come out of their shells, and that's just really wonderful to see. And quite often I think teenagers especially can get a bad rap sometimes about not being super engaged and not caring and all that kind of stuff, but that's not the experience we've had, so I think that's really important to take away. And it's a program, or replicating even a similar program, I would highly recommend it. I think it's brilliant. And we were actually, just another point to make, when we put the call out for mentors, we were oversubscribed.
I was really struck by that in your case, for sure, is the willingness and the goodwill that your staff members have at A&L Goodbody is really striking. And this isn't the first time, of course, that we've worked together from the point of view of matching volunteers within your own community, within your own company, to young people and otherwise. And I think that is one of the defining characteristics of you guys as a law firm, for sure.
Oh, thanks very much, Susan.
You deserve it well. You deserve it well indeed. Can I ask you one more question before we go? And that is this. One of the founding principles of Legal Fridays was documenting what you learned. Sometimes we did that through paper. So write down 5 things you learned today, or what key things did you learn from the mentors, etc. But the other thing we did, of course, was on LinkedIn. And the objective that I had for that was, number one is, when you lock in what you learn, it stays there. And when you really think about what you've learned, it sharpens the saw. But number two, LinkedIn is a brilliant professional management tool, I suppose, even when you are introducing it to young people. And the third thing is that it has a legacy. It stays there. They would be my reasons for using it. But since then, of course, we've seen some of the teenagers go on and continue to use it. We're tagged, in fact, sometimes, where they check in with us. What was your take, and not just on this program about locking in the learning, but how do you two lock in your learning from your own professional journey along the way?
Well, I do use LinkedIn for stuff like that. I think it's really important to, for, anything that I'm involved in internally here in A&L Goodbody, whether it's a program like this, whether it's a fundraising event that we have, whether it's something that we've been working on for a really long time that we want to share with the firm, we too catalogue it internally. It's on a central intranet where people can go back and read it and learn more. And I think sometimes it's really nice to look back on what you've done and all of your hard work, and to see it laid out in front of you. Sometimes you can forget what you've done once you move on to the next project, but it's really beneficial, I think, to take a step back and look at what you've done. And I use LinkedIn for that, as well as our internal intranet. So I don't know if you've anything to add there yourself.
Yeah, I think and part of as Claire was saying there, around, we kind of catalogue, we're involved in multiple projects all the time, and it's great then when we can kind of promote and share those projects, and it's a reminder for us of what we've done, but also showcases all the work that the firm does as well, in terms of our volunteering and our employee engagement and fundraising. And I think, and it's also, we often have our own reflections, just like Legal Fridays did at the end of the day. They did their reflection. We also do that. We tie evaluation into everything that we do. Having meetings regularly, just to kind of like, how did that go? What did we get right? What would we do differently next time? And that's just really important for us as we kind of, move forward.
Well, somebody else on this live stream said a little while ago, you don't know what you know until somebody asks you about it. And that is, even if it is yourself, by asking, what did we learn, what did we get right, etc. So thank you both so much indeed for being with us. We really appreciate you sharing your experience. We loved working with you for Legal Fridays. We wish our Legal Friday participants and mentors the very best indeed, as well as you both. And thank you for giving Active Peers AI the opportunity to do so.
Thanks so much, Susan.
Thanks so much, Susan.
Thank you indeed. And now we're going to move on to where we're going to go to the Q&A now between Eva and I. Well,
Hi,
Eva, what did you think of that?
I think that was such an insightful discussion that you had with our guest, Susan. I was really impressed by what Susie and Claire had to say about the students. Like if I was a teenager and I was stepping into a corporate law firm, I don't think I would be that comfortable to ask the challenging and out of the box questions. I was very impressed that the students were able to do so.
Well, they did, and I think part of that comes from, yes, indeed, today's confidence and an environment of where you can do that. And the other thing is the process, like I mentioned there with Claire and Susie, about how we encourage them to think about the questions and that second order question, etc. Questions are really powerful, Eva. And we know that as well as anybody does right here at Active Peers AI, because it helps you to direct the conversation and ultimately get the information that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So it's now time for us to finally move on to our Q&A session. And before we begin, I just want to thank our audience for all the questions that they submitted in advance. We love to hear from you, and we're going to try to answer as many questions as we can today. And if you still haven't submitted your questions, you still have a chance to do so by typing them in the live chat. So Susan, the first question that we got was, can you tell us more about the different types of communication techniques that were taught during the Legal Fridays program?
I can, certainly. So first of all, and Susie already referred to it there, the first thing what happened was the group of participants that we had, they were listening to a guest speaker. I am always conscious, Eva, when you bring in a guest speaker, that method of communication can be quite passive. I sit and I listen to you, and I'm going to listen to your insights, etc. The challenge with that is engagement, and that was something that Claire mentioned, is how do you keep people engaged? So the first thing we do is that we ask people, what do you want to get out of the day? What type of questions do you want to ask to a guest speaker? But also, this is a really nice one, and Susie referred to this, is we ask people to actually draw a picture of what they expect somebody who would work in this position to be. What do they look like? What does their environment look like? How do they dress? What tools do they use, etc. And by doing that, you create a sense of intrigue in the first place. And then when the speaker actually comes in, they're more aware of the assumptions that they set. And then the second thing is, when they were meeting the mentors, I always think it's so important to, again, prepare for that. So we did this in some ways. Again, we might have done it where they had to prepare a list of questions. But another thing that they did was they had to present findings of research to their mentors. And in order to do that, you need to step back a couple of steps. Like, what research would they have looked at? Like, what are people's feelings around education after school? What are people intending to go to college or do an apprenticeship? How do people feel about careers that may be subject to automation? What do they feel might be inaccessible in a career? So they come up with their own questions, they go off and they survey the group, and then they analyse the findings and then present them to the mentors. The key principle here, Eva, is that we feel it's really important at Active Peers AI is that when you're going to engage with an expert, a mentor, a speaker, is that there's prep done beforehand. And there is an active way of learning from them during. And then the last thing, and I know I've alluded to this several times already, is documenting what they learn. That could be as simple as write down 5 things you learned. That could be as something like creating a questionnaire that they want to make sure that they answer throughout the interaction. It could be a post on LinkedIn. It could be a group discussion. But I think it's so important to stop afterwards and think, what did I get out of that? And creating an environment where that is simply status quo.
That's great, Susan. I definitely think that listening to guest speakers itself can be quite passive. So it's good that Legal Fridays encourage the students to be more active and engaging by asking questions. And the assumptions activity sounds great, because then when the students actually meet the guest speakers and their mentors, then they can confirm if their assumptions were great or not. And for the second question that someone from the audience asked is, what skills should I learn to boost my employability in 2023?
Okay. Well, I have an answer for that I wouldn't have given you in 2022, Eva. And which is, of course, the question you're asking me. Number one, I would say, and I don't mean like number one, top of the pops, entirely super important. I'm just saying number one that I would give you in a relevant way is learning how to prompt something like ChatGPT. Prompting is becoming a real employable skill now, because the world has changed as regards how we produce things. How we produce content, how we produce a blog post, how we produce the questions we're going to ask in an interview, how we answer a list of questions in an interview. And I think boosting your employability, if you're able to understand AI, and I don't mean the technical aspect of it, I mean understand how to harness it for the benefit of an employer. That, I think, is a skill that I would not have said in 2022, because we would have been talking about things differently then. Now, my second one I would have said in 2022, I just think it matters all the more based on my answer to based on my first answer to this, and that is critical thinking. We now have AI that can give us answers to questions. What and where I feel the human interaction is still so important is critical thinking, is thinking about the appropriateness of that answer, the appropriateness of how we would deal in a situation, how one could be empathetic but not so empathetic that the message is lost. Critical thinking, to me, is a very employable skill. I also think it is in short supply. It is something that I work on all the time, and it's certainly something that I value a lot in the people that I work with around me. And then number three is creativity, and creativity too has changed. I think creativity is not just about how do we come up with new ideas. In fact, Eva, when people come up with too many ideas and don't have the follow through of implementing on them, that can be a problem as distinct to anything else. What I mean by creativity is looking at things from a different perspective. And that might stroll into the world of empathy, where you're looking at something from another person's point of view, or it could be how do we solve a problem in a different way, or not how do we solve a problem, but how do we create an opportunity out of something that is going well. Those, to me, are real ways that creativity can add value to an organisation, which itself lends themselves to be employable. And the other thing is that I would actually put all three together. I would say if you can prompt AI to help you, if you can be critical of not just the responses it gives to you, but the responses people give to you, and if you can be creative in the way you look at both problems and opportunities, I think that is a really magic combination.
Mm-hmm. Those are some interesting answers, Susan. And I know that you're a big fan of AI, especially copy.ai. So I wanted to ask you, do you have any tips on how do you harness AI and use it to your advantage?
I do. I tell you a super simple one, Eve, actually, is there's loads and loads of threads on Twitter now about people, or that people put together about how to become a better prompter. And things like, I'll give you a completely off relevant one, but sometimes they can be helpful to bring it back into relevance. Copy.ai have a great email that they send out every day called Prompt of the Day. And I've started looking at these over the past while to think, well, how am I not using AI in ways that others are and that others could be putting it into good effect? So one prompt that it sent out last week, I think it was last Friday, was if you were to say, I like these 5 things, what unrelated activities might I also like? And to use that as a prompt, and AI actually has been very good at suggesting some things that I hadn't considered at all, as well as prompting me about things that I do know, and I'm thinking, oh, this thing is getting very good. But by asking AI, here's some things that I do, what unrelated activities am I not thinking about? Now that's a way in which to look around corners. So the Twitter threads, reading the daily prompt, and asking AI, what am I not thinking about? They're my 3 things.
Interesting. I think I might give it a try after this live stream too. And then the other question that we got was, what is your step-by-step process for matching the right mentors with the right students?
I give you the most basic one that is hard to, it can come across like it's hard to measure, but it is the most basic one and is the one that works. And it is the thing we always say at Active Peers AI, Eva. It is matching people based on what they know and what they want to learn. If, to take that example, if you're brilliant at prompting AI to get great results, and I want to know about that, that makes a great match. It's simple. That makes a great match because I'm hungry to know what you're interested in sharing or what you've got experience on. Now, let's break it down from there though. If we go further than that, I think having a diversity matters. So if we have somebody, and diversity automatically was achieved in Legal Fridays because we had young people and we had people in their careers. So automatically, no matter who we matched together, we were going to be able to bring people together across 2 different demographics. If we were to build on top of that, I would say industry matters as well. If I can, let's say that I'm interested in the legal side of law and I can be matched with a solicitor, brilliant. And let's say, Eva, I have zero interest in the legal side of law, but I'd love to be involved in client technology or marketing or HR, and I can be matched with somebody in that industry. That can lead to a good combination as well. I'm personally a fan, this will come as a surprise to nobody, I personally am a fan of gender diversity as well. I think there's a lot to be gained from that. And I think in the context of young people who may or may not go to single-sex schools, I think it's all the more important that learning how to work with people of the opposite gender and other genders, I will say, to be more broadly inclusive, is important as well. We have designed an algorithm that can factor all of that in at the click of a button. And I know not everybody is going to use an algorithm in order to connect mentors and mentees, but number one is connecting people based on what they know and what they want to learn. And after that, other subsets of interest. And after that, diversity.
That's intriguing, Susan. I've never thought of considering about gender when matching people together. So definitely something to keep in mind. And now for our last question, someone asked, in what ways do you think a well-designed feedback mechanism can help organizations and individuals to improve their communication and career building skills?
Well, can I start off by telling you an unsuccessful one, right? Maybe if we start there. When we started doing this first, I remember our first feedback mechanism was a simple form. And it was asking the question, tell us 2 things that you've learned. The problem with that, Eva, is what if I learned that you grew up in Hong Kong and now you live in London? First of all, both of those things are technically true, but none of those are actually helping me learn anything from the conversation. The first thing a well-designed feedback mechanism is you have to be specific around what you're asking people. So it might be, what new information did you get from the conversation? What practical insight can you now put into place? What did you learn from somebody that you previously might have disagreed with? Something like that. By asking more targeted, and back to asking the quality of your questions again, that is what matters. Number 2, I think you need to write it down. And I don't mean a pen and paper. I mean, whether it's onto a LinkedIn post, whether it is writing it down in a notebook. I mean, more than thinking about it. That's important, because otherwise sitting and thinking on your own is on its own merit really good. But I would say by documenting it, whether it's journaling it, discussing it with somebody else, writing it in a form, writing a report on it. The form doesn't necessarily matter, the substance of it does. That's the second thing. And then the third thing, and this is where it gets super helpful, is if you can reflect back on it at a later stage. Legal Fridays happened over 3 independent Fridays. The point was on the second Friday we could reflect on the first. And then on the third one, similarly as well. Also, we were able to meet mentors at different stages and ask them for their feedback at different points. By establishing a feedback loop around a feedback mechanism that is well designed, that really is where the massive effective power can really happen.
Okay, so first of all, you said that we have to be specific about what you're asking. So asking targeted questions is important. And then thinking is not enough, as we also have to write it down so that we can reflect back on it at a later stage.
I think that's really important, and I do it all the time. I really do practice what I preach in this regard, and like I say, I have enough experience of what doesn't work to determine the difference between the two.
Those are some great answers, Susan. So unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for the Q&A session today. So we are going to end it right here. It was lovely to have you with us here, Susan, and our guests. And I'm sure that our audience has found the Q&A session as helpful as I have. And thank you so much to our amazing audience for taking up the time to join us in our YouTube Live and for all of your amazing questions. Active Peers AI is looking forward to seeing you all again in our future live streams. Take care and goodbye, everyone.